Chapter 2 of The Beetle. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Icy Jumbo. The Beetle by Richard Marsh. Chapter 2. Inside. I realised, and, so to speak, mentally photographed all the little details of the house in front of which I was standing with what almost amounted to a gleam of preternatural perception. An instant before, the world swam before my eyes. I saw nothing. Now I saw everything, with a clearness which, as it were, was shocking. Above all, I saw the open window. I stared at it, conscious as I did so of a curious catching of the breath. It was so near to me, so very near, I had but to stretch out my hand to thrust it through the aperture. Once inside, my hand would at least be dry. How it rained out there! My scanty clothing was soaked. I was wet to the skin. I was shivering, and, each second, it seemed to rain still faster. My teeth were chattering. The damp was liquefying the very marrow in my bones. And, inside that open window, it must be, so warm, so dry. There was not a soul in sight, not a human being anywhere near. I listened. There was not a sound. I alone was at the mercy of the sodden night. Of all God's creatures the only one unsheltered from the fountains of heaven which he had opened. There was not one to see what I might do, not one to care. I need fear no spy. Perhaps the house was empty. Nay, probably. It was my plain duty to knock at the door, rouse the inmates, and call attention to their oversight, the open window. The least they could do would be to reward me for my pains. But suppose the place was empty, what would be the use of knocking? It would be to make a useless clatter, possibly to disturb the neighbourhood, for nothing. And, even if people were at home, I might go unrewarded. I had learned, in a hard school, the world's ingratitude. To have caused the window to be closed, the inviting window, the tempting window, the convenient window, and then to be no better for it after all, but still to be penniless, hopeless, hungry, out in the cold and the rain, better anything than that. In such a situation, too late, I should say to myself that mine had been the conduct of a fool. And I should say it justly, too, to be sure. Leaning over the low wall, I found that I could very easily put my hand inside the room. How warm it was in there! I could feel the difference of temperature in my finger-tips. Very quietly I stepped right over the wall. There was just room to stand in comfort between the window and the wall. The ground felt to the foot as it were cemented. Stooping down, I peered through the opening. I could see nothing. It was black as pitch inside. The blind was drawn right up. It seemed incredible that anyone could be at home, and have gone to bed leaving the blind up and the window open. I placed my ear to the crevice. How still it was! Beyond doubt the place was empty. I decided to push the window up another inch or two, so as to enable me to reconnoitre. If anyone caught me in the act, then there would be an opportunity to describe the circumstances, and to explain how I was just on the point of giving the alarm. Only I must go carefully. In such damp weather it was probable that the sash would creak. Not a bit of it. It moved as readily and as noiselessly as if it had been oiled. This silence of the sash so emboldened me that I raised it more than I intended. In fact, as far as it would go. Not by a sound did it betray me. Bending over the sill, I put my head and half my body into the room. But I was no forwarder. I could see nothing. Not a thing. For all I could tell, the room might be unfurnished. Indeed, the likelihood of such an explanation began to occur to me. I might have chanced upon an empty house. In the darkness there was nothing to suggest the contrary. What was I to do? Well, if the house was empty, in such a plight as mine I might be said to have a moral, if not a legal right to its bare shelter. Who with a heart in his bosom would deny it me? Hardly the most punctilious landlord. Raising myself by means of the sill, I slipped my legs into the room. The moment I did so, I became conscious that, at any rate, the room was not entirely unfurnished. The floor was carpeted. I have had my feet on some good carpets in my time, I know what carpets are, but never did I stand upon a softer one than that. It reminded me somehow, even then, of the turf in Richmond Park. It caressed my instep, and sprang beneath my tread. To my poor travel-worn feet it was luxury after the puddly, uneven road. Should I, now that I had ascertained that the room was at least partially furnished, beat a retreat? Or should I push my researches further? It would have been rapture to have thrown off my clothes, and to have sunk down on the carpet then and there to sleep. But I was so hungry, so famine-goaded, what would I not have given to have lighted on something good to eat? I moved a step or two forward, gingerly, reaching out with my hands lest I struck, unawares, against some unseen thing. When I had taken 3 or 4 such steps, without encountering an obstacle, or indeed anything at all, I began all at once to wish I had not seen the house, that I had passed it by, that I had not come through the window, that I were safely out of it again. I became, on a sudden, aware that something was with me in the room. There was nothing ostensible to lead me to such a conviction. It may be that my faculties were unnaturally keen, but all at once I knew that there was something there. What was more, I had a horrible persuasion that, though unseeing, I was seen, that my every movement was being watched. What it was that was with me I could not tell. I could not even guess. It was as though something in my mental organisation had been stricken by a sudden paralysis. It may seem childish to use such language, but I was overwrought, played out, physically speaking, at my last counter, and, in an instant, without the slightest warning, I was conscious of a very curious sensation, the like of which I had never felt before, and the like of which I pray I may never feel again, a sensation of panic fear. I remained rooted to the spot on which I stood, not daring to move, fearing to draw my breath. I felt that the presence with me in the room was something strange, something evil. I do not know how long I stood there, spellbound, but certainly for some considerable space of time. By degrees, as nothing moved, nothing was seen, nothing was heard, and nothing happened, I made an effort to better play the man. I knew that, at the moment, I played the cur, and endeavoured to ask myself of what it was I was afraid. I was shivering at my own imaginings. What could be in the room, to have suffered me to open the window, and to enter unopposed? Whatever it was surely to the full as great a coward as I was, or why permit, unchecked, my burglarious entry? Since I had been allowed to enter, the probability was that I should be at liberty to retreat, and I was sensible of a much keener desire to retreat than I had ever had to enter. I had to put the greatest amount of pressure upon myself before I could summon up sufficient courage to enable me even to turn my head upon my shoulders, and the moment I did so I turned it back again. What constrained me? To save my soul I could not have said, but it was constrained. My heart was palpitating in my bosom. I could hear it beat. I was trembling so that I could scarcely stand. I was overwhelmed by a fresh flood of terror. I stared in front of me with eyes in which, had it been light, would have been seen the frenzy of unreasoning fear. My ears were strained so that I listened with an acuteness of tension which was painful. Something moved, slightly, with so slight a sound that it would have scarcely been audible to other ears save mine. But I heard. I was looking in the direction from